It's August 13th, 1986, Williamson County, Texas. The first light of dawn filters through the blinds of a small brick house on North Skyview Drive. Inside, everything looks ordinary until you step into the master bedroom. A woman lies motionless on the bed, Christine Morton. A blanket covers most of her body, but the bruises on her face tell a story no one wants to hear. Police cars crowd the driveway, red and blue lights flickering across manicured lawns. Neighbors stand behind the tape whispering. In the living room, a 3-year-old boy, Eric, clutches a toy truck, wide-eyed, silent, watching uniforms move through the house that no longer feels like home. Christine is dead. Her husband, Michael Morton, says he left early for work and came back to chaos. But within hours, suspicion begins to settle, not on an intruder, but on him. The cops believe the husband did it. They have no idea that the only witness, the little boy, saw everything, and that his words would be ignored for decades. It begins in Williamson County, Texas, mid-1980s, a landscape of quiet cul-de-sacs, open skies, and faith in small-town safety. People left doors unlocked, trusted their neighbors, and believed bad things happened somewhere else. Christine Morton fit perfectly into that world. Friends described her as gentle but strong, the sort of woman who remembered every birthday and always sent thank you notes written in looping cursive. She worked part-time at a clothing boutique, loved photography, and spent most afternoons on the floor with her toddler, Eric, building Lego towers that leaned dangerously but never fell. Michael Morton, her husband, was a man of structure. A supervisor at a Safeway warehouse, he clocked in early, clocked out late, and measured life in lists and ledgers. His co-workers called him dependable, maybe too dependable. Where Christine was spontaneous, Michael was careful, but they fit. They always had. The couple met in 1978, married 2 years later, and by 1983 they'd bought a small brick home on North Skyview Drive. Mortgage paid on time, lawn trimmed, a tidy life in tidy rows of houses. Nothing about them suggested the darkness waiting ahead. Yet, behind that postcard image, the rhythm of married life had shifted. Christine's diary, later recovered by police, showed flashes of disappointment. She wrote about Michael's long hours, about feeling unseen. One entry ended with heartbreaking optimism. "We'll find our way back." The summer of 1986 should have been their renewal. Eric turned 3 that March. The party photos show him in a paper crown, cake icing on his face. Christine's smile in those pictures radiates warmth, not the smile of a woman living in fear. On August 12th, the night before everything collapsed, they ate dinner together. Christine washed the dishes while Michael watched television. They argued briefly, something small, soon forgotten. Around 10, lights went out. At 5:30 a.m., Michael left for work as usual. He later told police he kissed his sleeping wife goodbye and drove toward the Safeway depot, headlights slicing through the early morning fog. Christine lay beneath the blanket, motionless. Blood had soaked into the pillow. Michael dialed 911, his voice tight with disbelief. "My wife, she's not breathing." Sirens pierced the calm of Skyview Drive. Neighbors gathered on lawns as uniformed officers taped off the house. A community built on trust watched suspicion bloom in real time. Detectives moved through the rooms, photographing every corner. There were no signs of forced entry. A purse lay open on the dresser, cash still inside, jewelry untouched. To the untrained eye, it looked personal, rage, not robbery. In the living room sat little Eric, holding a toy truck, staring at strangers moving through his home. He was calm in that hollow way children sometimes are when they don't understand yet that life has shattered. By midnight, Michael Morton was no longer a grieving husband. He was the prime suspect. The narrative was simple, almost too simple. Husband kills wife after argument, hides emotion behind logic. Detectives saw what fit that story and stopped looking further. But there was something they didn't hear. The small, trembling voice of a child who had seen another man in the bedroom that morning. A man with long hair and a blue bandana. Eric tried to tell them. No one listened. That silence would define the next 25 years of Michael Morton's life. The crime scene photos were clinical. A quiet suburban bedroom transformed into something unrecognizable. The bedspread pulled halfway down, a single lamp still glowing faintly, and beneath it, Christine Morton, 31 years old, struck repeatedly with a blunt object. The coroner would later estimate time of death between 1 and 6 a.m., the hours Michael claimed to be asleep beside her, and then at work. Detective Wood, leading the case, walked through the home with quiet confidence. He was known for instincts, for feeling guilt before proving it, and from the start he felt it in Michael. Neighbors said the Mortons had argued, small things mostly, Michael being distant, Christine feeling ignored. To detectives it was motive enough. They searched the trash, found a note, Christine's handwriting, left on Michael's birthday card. It read, "I love you, but sometimes I feel you're not here with me. I want us back." To investigators, that was evidence of a failing marriage. To Michael, it was a love letter, the same note that would later be used to sentence him to life in prison. But there were details that didn't fit. A green bandana found near the crime scene fence. A report from a neighbor about a man in a van parked nearby that morning. Even a bloody footprint that didn't match Michael's shoes. Yet those details never made it past the detective's desk. The story of the husband who snapped was too neat, too comforting. Because if evil came from the inside, from someone who looked like Michael, then the rest of the town could stay innocent. And so, while grief was still raw, while Christine's body had barely been laid to rest, the machine of accusation started grinding forward. Within days, Michael Morton, the quiet warehouse supervisor, the meticulous man of lists, was called in for questioning. The tape recorder clicks. Detective Wood's voice cuts through the static. "Mike, you seem calm. That bothers me. Most men in your shoes would be falling apart." Michael, exhausted and hollow-eyed, sits across the metal table. "I already fell apart," he says quietly. They ask him to reenact his morning. He does, over and over. They ask him what time he left, what time he returned, why he didn't call his wife at lunch. Hours turn to days. Detectives push harder. They suggest Christine wanted to leave him. They imply an affair. Did she say she was unhappy? Did you get angry? Did you black out? Each time, Michael answers calmly. "No, I didn't hurt her. I loved her." But calm was read as cold, logic mistaken for guilt. After 12 hours of questioning, the detectives had no confession, only suspicion. But sometimes suspicion is enough. When the case reached the district attorney's office, prosecutor Ken Anderson believed he had a winner. He'd built his reputation on being tough, righteous, moral. In small-town Texas, the DA was almost a priest, and Anderson wore that authority like a badge of divine certainty. Michael Morton was arrested 3 weeks later, handcuffed in front of co-workers who couldn't believe it. Courtroom packed, cameras flashing, a community divided. The prosecution's story was simple. Michael Morton beat his wife to death after she refused to have sex with him on his birthday. They painted him as emotionally distant, controlling, repressed, a man whose bottled anger finally erupted. There was no DNA, no fingerprints, no eyewitness, only interpretation. The defense argued innocence, that the evidence pointed to an unknown intruder, but every attempt to introduce that theory was blocked. The bandana? Not relevant. The stranger in a van? Hearsay. Eric's statement that Daddy wasn't home when Mommy got hurt. Unreliable. He's only 3. Piece by piece, truth was removed from the courtroom until only a story remained, one written by the prosecution, polished by certainty, and sealed with moral outrage. On February 17, 1987, after less than 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder. Christine's family wept. Michael stared straight ahead, a man frozen in disbelief. Sentenced to life in prison. Fade out. Prison changes a man, but Michael refused to let it define him. He read constantly, philosophy, theology, law. He wrote letters to his son, hundreds of them, though none were delivered. He marked birthdays with quiet prayers. He missed graduations that never happened. He learned to find meaning in small things. The sunbeam that crossed his bunk each morning, the rare kindness of another inmate. In 1990, his parents sold their home to fund an appeal. It failed. In 1993, another petition. Denied. In 2001, one last attempt. Rejected. Each envelope came back stamped, "No grounds for retrial." But then, the world outside began to change. DNA testing had advanced. Innocence projects were emerging across the U.S., fighting for the wrongly convicted. In 2005, a lawyer named John Rayleigh took on Michael's case. Alongside the Innocence Project, they requested DNA testing on one item, the bloody bandana found near the crime scene 20 years earlier. The request was denied, again and again. District Attorney Ken Anderson fought to block it. He said, "The case is closed, but truth, like rot, doesn't stay buried forever." After 6 years of legal struggle, a judge finally ordered the DNA test. When the results came back in 2011, the silence in that courtroom was absolute. The blood on the bandana, not Christine's, not Michael's. It belonged to another man, later linked through DNA to the murder of another woman, Deborah Baker, killed 2 years after Christine, less than a mile away. The real killer had been free, and Michael Morton had been caged for 25 years for a crime he didn't commit. He was released on October 4, 2011. Outside the prison gates, the air hit his face like a wave. The world had changed. Cars sleeker, phones smaller, everything louder. But he just closed his eyes and breathed. Freedom, after so long, felt like a memory he had to relearn. The DNA evidence didn't just exonerate Michael, it exposed something deeper: prosecutorial misconduct. During the trial, critical evidence had been deliberately withheld. The neighbor's report of a strange van, Eric's statement about a man with long hair, the bloody bandana itself, all hidden, all suppressed. When the truth came out, the public demanded accountability. For the first time in Texas history, a sitting judge, former prosecutor Ken Anderson, was criminally charged for hiding evidence. He served only 5 days in jail, but the message was clear. Even in a system built on law, justice sometimes arrives through shame, not structure. Michael Morton, meanwhile, rebuilt. He remarried, wrote a memoir, Getting Life, not about revenge, but about forgiveness. He said, "Hate is a second prison." Michael's case changed Texas law. The Michael Morton Act, passed in 2013, requires prosecutors to open their files to defense attorneys, a safeguard meant to stop what happened to him from happening again. But every safeguard is only as strong as the people who uphold it. For Christine's family, the victory was bittersweet. They'd lost faith in the system and in their own judgment. For Eric, the little boy who saw everything, the scars never faded. He grew up with the shadow of 2 fathers, one he loved, one the world told him to fear. Years later, when he finally reunited with Michael, The first thing he said wasn't, "I'm sorry." He said, "I knew you didn't do it." And in that moment, all the years of pain condensed into silence. The kind that doesn't hurt, just heals. In the end, the story of Michael and Christine Morton isn't just about guilt or innocence. It's about assumption, how the human mind rushes to fill uncertainty with stories that make sense, even when those stories destroy the truth. It's about how grief can turn to blame, and justice can twist into vengeance. And it's about the quiet endurance of a man who refused to hate the world that wronged him. Because sometimes, the most radical act of justice is forgiveness. Christine's memory lives in the light of a law named after her husband. Michael's story lives as a warning. And Eric, the boy who saw everything, lives as proof that even in the aftermath of tragedy, love endures.